A paradox is a group of propositions for each of which we have apparently sound arguments, yet the propositions taken together are inconsistent. We cannot affirm all the propositions in the group, yet we have good reason to believe that they are all true. My approach is a narrower one than is usually taken to the mind-body problem, but I believe that this approach can help us to think clearly about what is going on with the particular solutions that have been given to the problem in the past. It will help us not to get lost in the metaphysics of things other than the mind and the body. The mind-body problem, in its full generality, which I introduce in Chapter 1, is about the mind and the body, not about the self or consciousness or the soul or anything other than the mind and body. In Chapter 5, however, I do consider some important scientific theories of consciousness as examples of scientific treatments of this part of the mind and the mind-body problem. Consciousness, the study of which has recently become important in the cognitive sciences, can reasonably be regarded as a part of the mind, though it is not the whole of it, nor is it, as Descartes believed, the essence of mind. Among other questions, the mind-body problem can be taken to raise the issue of the physicality of the mind. It's certainly hard to see how it can be true that the mind, and with it consciousness, is just physical matter. We cannot watch or even imagine the neurons firing and emitting little bursts of mentality or consciousness, like diaphanous fairies flitting around the brain. The brain is ostensibly physical, indeed material, weighing in at a hefty 3 pounds or so, but it doesn't make sense even to ask how much the mind weighs. One can say that the human brain is approximately 2% of the weight of the human being, and one can say that it contains 100 million neurons, not to mention glial cells. But these things are not true of the human mind. We can say that the brain measures roughly 5 by 6 by 4 inches. Nothing remotely like that can be said of the mind. Of course, there are more sophisticated versions of materialism, the thesis that everything that exists is something material, or physicalism, the thesis that everything that exists is something physical, which I discuss in Chapter 3, but the same difficulty remains buried in all of them. Following David Chalmers, philosophers and others have wanted to distinguish the hard problem from the easy problem of consciousness, or rather the easy problems. There are many, according to Chalmers, and quite a lot has been written about this recently. By the easy problems, Chalmers means the problems of describing the physical processes by which we come to have, for example, the consciousness of whiteness, assuming that we can make sense of this phrase. Clearly, there are many problems of this sort. We have to understand the mechanisms of the eyes, of the ears, of touch, of the nose, and so on. The hard problem is to understand how our experience of whiteness, and with it our consciousness of whiteness, could arise from the pure physical systems operating in the visual cortex. The idea is that we can understand experience by the physical processes that go on when we perceive, but that there are properties of the experiences that cannot be understood in this way. These are the qualia, and for Chalmers, they are not physical. Fair enough, but this new 20th century hard problem is simply a souped-up version of an old problem which, as we shall see in Chapter 1, appeared with Descartes and his critics in 1641. The hard problem is hard. Why? Because it is the mind-body problem, and that is a hard problem. Chalmers' hard problem of consciousness is just the mind-body problem with a new name, complete with a very sharp distinction between the more easily understood physical processes and consciousness or qualia or mind. For Descartes, the principal attribute of the mind is consciousness, and so, as his critics pointed out, there is a problem about the relation of the mind to the body. This is all down to the difficulty of asserting that the mind is physical. The mind does not seem to fit into the world of physics and physiology at all. Or so claims dualism. I consider different forms of dualism in Chapter 2.